The zombie bears build that I use. Again, you want zombie bears in your helm, boots, offhand for the extra damage you're going to get with that. Ideally, if you're solo, you want to try and get a unity for your follower and a unity for yourself. That's going to reduce your damage by basically half, especially if you have a cannot die temporal relic, or not temporal relic, but relic of Inferni follower. I'm going to go ahead and use that. But if you don't have that, it's even better for damage. You can run with a poison SOJ. The more poison and elite damage, the better. And it also gives you max mana, so that's another good piece to have. For gloves, if you have Jade gloves, I'd recommend wearing those to get the set bonus. If you don't, just any gloves with int, vit, crit damage, and crit chance. You don't necessarily need speed, because like I say all the time, speed does hurt you with your bears, because unless you can manage your mana, speed is just going to waste away mana faster, and your bears are going to hit less hard depending on how much speed you're using over crit damage or crit chance or average damage in your gear. So ideally, you want less speed, more crit damage, crit chance, and average damage to get harder hitting bears and use less mana. Shoulders can be, you can run Ashira, shoulders, and bracers, or Ashira shoulders and armor. Or if you have Jade, again, you can go with Jade to get the 4-piece bonus. Helm can really be anything. It's not too strict on the helm. You could run the pet helm if you wanted to, and throw in Fetish Army into the mix of your skills. You could even run Sycophants for a passive. For the sake of this build right now, though, I'm going to show you just strictly bears, no other skills for damage but bears, just to show you how good they are alone. Amulet. This amulet is not ideal. You're going to want one with poison damage. I don't have one with poison damage because I've rerolled my other two amulets to cold and physical for my main builds that I use. So I'm still looking for another amulet to get to convert to poison. But ideally, your amulet is going to look like this, but without the average damage and with poison damage instead. Reaper Ops is probably your best option for bracers for this build, because it's going to give you tons of mana when you get a health globe, and when you're fighting elites, health globes pop out to the percent of life that you're taking them down to, like a 25%, 50%, and when you kill them as well. So as long as you're killing the elites pretty quick, health globes are just going to be popping out everywhere, and you're just going to get a ton of mana. So, and this synergizes really, really well with Gruesome Feast. For the belt, you can run Wishing Hour, you can run Chest Belt. Chest Belt is extremely powerful right now, and you can get a lot of HP on it as well, so it's a strong belt. The pants, I'm going to say you definitely want to try and get Swamplanders, because poison damage on pants, that's the only slot that can get an elemental damage versus pants. So probably going to try and gamble these if you don't have them already. I notice when you gamble for pants, these pop up a lot. They're not very rare, so if you don't have these, try and gamble for them. Weapon, ideally you're going to want a Shard of Hate for this build. It probably would be better if I use this Shard of Hate, but since I just socketed this weapon, I'm going to go ahead and just use this for now. And I haven't used it yet either, so I'm going to have some fun with it. But ideally, you're probably going to want a Shard of Hate, something similar to this with int bit socket, because the proc is 231% weapon damage is poison, the Nova, and that's almost as much. A bear is 392, so 231 is a good chunk of basically a bear, and that does get increased by the amount of poison you have in your gear. So you'll see that proc rate damage go up with more poison damage that you get in your gear. Boots can be Zuni boots, they can be Jade boots, anything to give you an extra set bonus is what I would recommend with boots, but remember you definitely want to have the zombie charge for damage there. Ring of Royal Grandeur, another one that you want to try and get in the build to cut your set bonuses down by 1. Offhand is 100% must be a Serpent. I don't think there's any other offhand that even comes close to a Serpent in terms of damage reduction and just overall quality of life, because it says 30% of your damage is now redirected to your zombie dogs. And that means that when you have lifelink dogs, if you have a 30% Serpent, you're getting a total of 40% damage reduction when you have your lifelink dogs up. So definitely a end game slot right there. All right, and the skills, I usually go with Slam Dance for the elites. Off that for the elites, you can run Rain Dance if you want. If you're having a problem with mana, like if you don't have the Jade set to get that mana regeneration, you're probably gonna want to go with Rain Dance. But if you're finishing elites fast enough with Slam, that's also fine. With Soul Harvest, with this build, a lot of people like to run Siphon. Some people run Languish for the reduced movement speed, and a lot of people also run Vengeful Spirit. Personally though, when I run bears, I like to run Swallow Your Soul because it's 5% mana per enemy harvested, and if you have 5 enemy harvested, that's 25% max mana, which comes out to roughly about 1200 mana if you're at about 1000 mana. So that's a big chunk. That's basically a free bear, just over a free bear cast. So I like to have that. And max mana with this build is huge because you have to remember your Reaper Wraps and your Gruesome Feast passive are constantly filling up your mana. And Gruesome Feast also states that it's 10% of your maximum mana, and Reaper Wraps is 28% of your maximum resource. So depending on how high your maximum mana is, that's going to synergize better with these two here. For Piranhas, definitely Pronado. The pool is just ridiculous with bears. It helps you focus your bears really well. And then Spirit Walk, Honored Guest is another good one. It's going to give you 20% of your maximum mana. They've changed it to 20% of your mana over, like, I think it was 3 seconds or something, to just an instant 20% mana. So that'll play into the rotation, and I'll show that here in just a minute. Lifelink Dogs for your Serpent, so proc that extra 30% damage reduction, and the 10% from Lifelink. You can go with Leeching Beast as well, really good with life on hit. Really good with life on hit. And finally, your main skill is going to be Zombie Bears with Zombie Charger. Paragon points. Obviously, you're going to want to have your movement speed at 25, so depending on where your movement speed is in the rest of your build, you're going to want to have that at 25. My boots are 12, so I'm going to go with 13. Movement speed does not go over 25% with Paragon, so just get it to 25% total. Sometimes I'll go with a little bit of int and vit, but for the sake of this being T4, I'm going to go ahead and pump it all into vit. You can also go with max mana if you're having max mana issues in your gear. That's fine as well. Here, start with crit damage, then go with crit chance, and then when you finish crit chance, if you can, go with cooldown reduction. You don't need attack speed with this build. It helps only in the sense that if you're not running out of mana, you're going to be able to throw more bears. But ideally, you want cooldown reduction for this slot here. For this slot, I always start by maxing life regen, and then I kind of put a good amount into armor and all res, and usually put 1 or 2 points into life as well. Kind of keep it a little bit balanced here, but just remember this. This is the key to remember with your defensive passives. The more life that you have, the harder it is for this life regen to give you more life. The less life you have and the stronger that small pool of life is, the better this life regen is working. For instance, if you have 100,000 life and have 10 million EHP with that 100,000 life, your life regeneration is giving you 10% of your maximum EHP per second if you have like 10,000 life regen per second. If you had 1 million life with 1 million EHP, it's only giving you 1% of your maximum EHP per second. So if you understand that, that's the way you want to do that. Area damage, I usually go with this first. Area damage is pretty big. This is really the only place you're going to be able to get it unless you have it on shoulders. That's like the only other slot I would say it's worth getting. Resource cost reduction, another big one. And then life on hit. It doesn't really proc that often with bears, so it's not that big to have life on hit here. Most of your regeneration and quality of life is going to come from life regeneration. So that's that. Let's show you what we do with this here. Okay, so the first thing you want to do, make sure you have your dogs out. Usually, when I come up into a pack, what I'm going to do right away is Pronado to get the boost. I'm going to throw my Soul Harvest, I'll do this without slam just to kind of give you an idea of the damage. And then when you get low on mana, pop your Spirit Walk. And the thing you have to remember too is Spirit Walk is now 20% of your maximum mana the second you activate it. So don't activate it immediately. Kind of pop it after you've used a few bears. And another thing, whenever you use bears, there's a little trick that a lot of people don't know, and it's what really makes bears shine. Watch closely when I'll just take out these guys and show you real quick. Okay, so when I'm against a wall, if you watch the bears, they come out in a straight line. Now it doesn't always come out in a straight line, but most of the time if you're against a wall or a certain object, your bears are going to kind of come out in a straight line, which is going to give you the full 1200% weapon damage, because there's 3 bears, each one is 400% weapon damage. So the idea is when you're up against like an elite or a boss, to try and get against an object and throw your bears to get them in a straight line. That way all your bears are hitting. When you're not in a straight line, like right here, you're seeing that the bears are kind of spread out a little more, and that's perfectly fine for trash. But ideally for elites, you want to kind of sit up against a wall and angle your bears. That way you're getting the full damage from them. Now, another thing that I'm gonna say, probably go ahead and do this if you can manage your mana, and that all depends on how much management you have in your gear. A lot of it is max mana because of the way that Gruesome Feast works with the Reaper Wraps. Gruesome Feast and Reaper Wraps synergizing to give you just a ton of resource per health globe that you get. But what I'm going to tell you now is, if you have the Jade set, just 4 pieces is all you need, so 3 pieces with Grandeur and Reaper Wraps, I'm going to go ahead and say drop Spiritual Atonement and run you can either do one of 2 things. You can drop Spiritual or you can drop Gruesome Feast. I'm probably going to go ahead and try and actually drop Gruesome Feast. I can't really remember which one I drop, but you can play around with it. If you drop Gruesome Feast, you can run Pierce the Veil. Now I know, Controlled Anger, that's crazy. Why would you ever run Pierce the Veil? That's stupid. You can do it now. It's possible to do it, and that's solely because of the Reaper Wraps. So, like I said, if you have Jade Harvester, 4-piece bonus, and you have a decent amount of mana management in your gear, you can run Pierce the Veil. And another big thing is to make sure you're running Swallow Your Soul, because it's going to give you that big chunk of mana every time you use it. With this build, a key thing is to make sure you don't have too much pickup radius. I know that sounds crazy, but when you're running Pierce the Veil and you're relying on globes to give you that max mana, if you're picking up too much globes too quick and you don't have anything to, because the problem is when you have a lot of pickup radius, the second you move, you pick up all the globes that are around you. So like for instance, if you're running Thing of the Deep, you're going to pick up all the globes that are around you. And the idea is to not pick them all up right away, it's to kind of use them when you need them. So, especially since you're not using Gruesome Feast, you're not getting that damage bonus from that, so it's better off to just wait and kind of scout for globes as you're killing like an elite, for instance, and pick them up when you need them. And I'll check the chat, guys, in just a second, answer your questions. I'm going to be highlighting this in the stream and making it into a little video for kind of a guide on how to run bears. So I'm just trying to focus on this right now. See when I'm against the wall how the bears are kind of going relatively in a straight line. They're kind of clumped out a little bit better. And this build is T6able. You can run this build in T6. You just have to manage your mana. Make sure that you're... if you can't run Pierce the Veil, don't run it. If you have enough mana regen, though, you can run Pierce the Veil. So it definitely is T6able. It's just something that you would use in T6 up until you have maybe Jade Harvester or a really strong pet build. And even with the pet build, I would actually still use bears. I would just use them in a different way. You would be outputting less damage, but they would be kind of a better AoE clearage skill versus your pets that are really good at single target. See, there's no mana problems at all with this build, so as long as you're outputting enough damage to take the elite down pretty quickly, you're not going to have any real mana problems. And gauge your mana problems with the tournament level. The thing I like to say is if you're killing an elite in 15 seconds or less, you're in the right tournament level. If it takes you any longer than that, you need to lower the tournament. Or if you're running out of mana after 10 to 15 seconds, you need to lower the tournament level. So that's pretty much it. My crit chance right now is 55.3 and my crit damage is 552. My all-res is around 1300, 1400. That doesn't need to be that high, but it also depends on your tournament level. My toughness is 7 mil, but you have to remember with the Serpent and the Lifelink Dogs, you're getting a huge amount of damage reduction. So you can run, you can run this really low, a lot lower than you would think if you have a Serpent. If you don't have a Serpent, regardless of anything else in your build, you need to gamble for a Serpent right away. They're pretty easy to gamble, so do that immediately. That's the first thing you want to do is get a Serpent. The second most crucial piece is obviously the Reaper Wraps. After those two, I would say get your Grander and hunt for Jade pieces to get that mana regen. So that's pretty much it, guys. You can check out my stream, twitch.tv/controlledanger. I do viewer runs and I help with solo builds and questions and whatnot. So feel free to check that out.